So now I'm gonna go ahead and serge my side seams. And I'm actually serging these together. So that's my serge side seam. Okay, so next I'm going to put my facing pieces together. So I'm going to do the same step that I just did on my bodice, is pin my side seam for the facing together. So that's under the armhole here. And I'm just going to leave everything else open. So what I have here is my front, just like my bodice. My front facing, which was cut on the fold, is laying down face up, and then with right sides together, I'm pinning the underarm seam here, which would be at the side seam. I'm going to leave everything else unpinned. Okay, so this would actually be my center back here where these two pieces open up, and I'm going to pin my side seam here. If you have any excess interfacing, feel free to trim it, but we will also serge this, so you could always cut it off with the serger. Okay, so I'm going to go in and stitch these two underarm ends at my 1/2 inch seam allowance with back tacking with a number 2 stitch. I'm then going to press these open, and I'm going to serge them together just like I did my bodice. Okay, so I am just pressing open the seam allowance at both underarm seams. Okay, so those are both pressed, and then now I'm going to serge it together. Okay, so that seam allowance will get serged together. Again, if you have any excess interfacing, go ahead and trim it. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and serge my side seam allowance on my facing. On both sides. And then I'm actually going to go in and serge the entire bottom edge of my facing. So not the neckline and shoulder edges, but just the bottom edge, because that will be the finish for the facing. Okay, so I can also do that center back edge here because that's going to get caught in the zipper. And I've already serged my center back edge on my top. So that's my center back edge. So I just basically don't want to do the armhole or the shoulders or the neckline at the top of the facing. I'm just going to serge across the entire body. Now if you serged, and be careful because it's curved, if you serged your seam allowance together at the side of the facing and the side of your bodice, make sure that you catch when you cross this seam, your seam allowance open and flat. If you serge them together like I did, make sure that you catch that seam allowance facing the back of the garment. Okay, so I'm just going to check it before I go over it. Try not to pull on it too much so it doesn't shut out. And you can use the blade to trim any excess interface. Okay, so again, I'm about to come up on my side seam, so I just want to make sure that's facing the back or caught open and flat, depending on how you serge it. Okay, so now your facing should look like this. Oh, I didn't do that last center back edge. I'll do that. So I've serged the entire bottom. It should be put together at the underarm seam at the bottom of the armhole. And again, the entire bottom is serged. And that side seam allowance is either caught open and flat or facing the back of the garment. And I just need to do my center back on this side. Okay, next I'm gonna go ahead and insert my zipper. So let's see. I have, so you think this is an 18, oh actually a 24-inch zipper here. That's separating, that's gonna go at the back of my bodice, and I need to measure my center back edge because the zipper is way too long. So my center back edge is, let's see, 13.5, and so this is going to vary because some of you have crop tops. I want to actually mark 1/4 of an inch with my chalk here because that's my seam allowance. And what I'm going to do is, for the separating zipper, I'm going to have to shorten it at the top. Okay, so I know that I have 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom. So I'm going to mark that. And now I just want to measure, because this needs to be exact, the distance in between those markings. Just see my ruler. Which becomes 12 3/4. Okay. So I'm going to, because my zipper has about, I'm gonna say, 1 inch of zipper tape at the top, open my zipper, and from my zipper stop I'm gonna measure up 1/4 of an inch, and I'm actually gonna trim the rest of the zipper with pinking shears or with scissors. So I'm gonna do that on both sides. So 1/4 of an inch here is 2 blocks, and that's because we put 1/4 inch seam allowance on our neckline. Okay, so then I'm gonna either cut that with pinking shears or with scissors. I'm gonna cut it with pinking shears just above it. If you cut it with scissors and it starts to fray, you can always take a lighter and just melt the edges. Okay, so then I want from that point for this to be 12 3/4. Oh, I'm sorry, I just did that completely wrong. So this needs to be at my 12 3/4, and I need to mark here. Make sure I don't make it too short. So I'm marking at 13. Excuse me. And so for this zipper, since I have this heavy molded zipper, I'm actually going to have to sew a thread zipper stop here, because there would be nothing to prevent my zipper from coming off at the top. So I went ahead and marked my 13 inches. Let me just double check it, because I have made a zipper too short before. This is actually made it a little bit too long. So I'm gonna go in and cut at the 13 inches. Those are like these zipper teeth. Okay, and then I accounted for my 1/4 inch at the top, which if I want to mark it now I can. So I'm actually going to pull out those top 2 teeth, which I can either do with my hand. I'm going to use either tweezers or pliers. I have a special set of zipper pliers, or you can use just like needle nose pliers. And I'm going to take, so if my 1/4 inch line is here, is here, and I'm going to end up taking off 2 of the zipper teeth. Okay. Okay, so I have my pliers here. These are for zipper shortening. It's called a crimper, and I'm going to just go in, grab that zipper tooth and just pull it off. And I'm taking off, I guess, the top 3. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and you can also use this for the metal teeth. I'm just using a zipper that I had access to. Okay, so then you can see what that looks like. Okay, so I need to make a thread zipper stop here. So I'm going to sew with 2 threads and have a knot at the end of my thread. And what I'm going to do is actually stitch around my first zipper tooth here, just wrapping my thread around. And that should prevent my zipper from going off track. If you have a metal zipper that's separating, you have a bracket at the top that you can take off with pliers, and then once you shorten your zipper, you can just stick it back Okay, so I'm just going around and around, and it'll make a little kind of like thread mound there. That should be kind of thick. And so when I go to close my zipper, let's see. It should, I'm not going to tug on it because once I stitch it in, it should be okay. It should stop, and it is stopping my zipper from going past that spot. Okay, just make sure you don't accidentally zip it up all the way and lose it. This zipper is easy to get back on track, but invisible, you can't get back on track, and some of the other centered zippers, they're just really hard to get back on track. You have to take the hardware off. Okay, so then I'm just going to knot this on the back. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll go ahead and place the zipper. Okay, so now I'm going to place the zipper. So I've already serged. Remember, your center back edges should already be serged. And I'm going to go ahead and place my zipper with the front side of it. This zipper is actually a reversible zipper. So I'm lining up my edge at the top, and I'm going to line up my zipper tape with my serged edge here. And if it is separating and the zipper pull is in your way, you can just separate the two pieces and stitch one on at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it all the way down to the bottom. I think I am going to actually separate the two, because that zipper pull is really big on this zipper. So this is the pinning for one side of the zipper, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch right in the twill tape. I'm going to try to stitch as close to the zipper teeth as I can. I'm using the top stitching foot, making sure that I don't stitch on the actual zipper teeth, because these will go. I'm stitching at number 2 stitch. I'm going to back tack at the top and at the bottom. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Just clip my thread tails. Okay. Okay, so I've just inserted the zipper on both sides of my center back. I'm gonna go ahead and just double check and make sure everything's lined up and zip it. So I'm gonna make sure my waistline matches up and make sure that my center back neckline matches up, which it does. And I'm actually gonna take this to the iron and go ahead and press it real quick, and then we'll apply our facing, finish the shoulder, and then do the hem. Okay, so just pressing the center back edge, make sure it's nice and flat. That should already be finished because we've already serged it. Be careful not to melt your zipper by applying too much heat. So you may want to use a pressing claw, or just kind of be careful how much heat you're applying to the zipper here.